This morning's talk is titled Investigations of Negativity. That's a plural, investigations. And this is based on the inspiration for the title. The topic is from Maria Bardowska in Toronto. And I'm not going to read her entire question because I'll get confused if I do it. It's too elaborate. And all she's really doing is specifying the way in which she is experiencing her confusion, her difficulties. But she says the word investigating has for me a connotation of making analysis of my mind, and when I apply it to the meditation, it leads sometimes to analysis of what I perceive, and then it goes on. So what do you mean by investigating negativity, which is a phrase that I have used? So simply put, what I mean is when negativity in the form of thoughts, emotions, thoughts that are about with a topic, a subject, somebody did something, you did something, some kind of structure in terms of something you could describe, like a little tiny story about something, a little post-it note about what happened to you. Going into that, investigating that by analyzing it, looking at whether you should do that. Do you want to do that? If you're compelled, if you're drawn, if you're magnetized into that, and that seems to be what you want to do. Here's what I do say. Be aware of what you're doing. And when I say that, I don't say, don't let your mind drift. I'm not talking about that. Don't misunderstand me. If your mind drifts, then be aware of that. Awareness. I can't say it enough. It's a good thing it starts with an A. Not sure why, but it seems like I like pointed letters. I always liked John F. Kennedy's signature because it started out with a big point on it. I spent a lot of time studying handwriting. And that's another way. Handwriting is another way if you wanted to go that direction. Any kind of expression. The psychologist, I think it was Adler, back in the time of Freud and C.G. Jung and so on, Adler referred to handwriting as frozen movement. So use whatever kinds of investigations that draw you in, that magnetize you, that you feel like, well, this will be a good approach. I mean, you can't count them all. But if you just go in and look at the number of therapies there are, look up therapies in Wikipedia. I did about 2 or 3 years ago when I was going into addiction recovery settings, just to find out what people were dealing with. And I think there was 75 to 100 then. There's probably even more now. There's more that, Wikipedia has trouble keeping up. How do they do that anyway? My. So I'm inviting Maria, I'm saying, go into it, but be aware to make sure that the awareness itself has a priority. And this is difficult to do for someone who is trapped by their thinking process. It's true, it's not true. It's true, it's not true. Knock that off. You don't have to do that. You don't have to know whether something is true or not. This is a misunderstanding about the whole nature of it is and it isn't. Because we get trapped by our desire, our compulsion, our addiction to knowing what is true. And we think that by judging this, well, this is wrong and this is right, that somehow we have a leg up. Somehow we have some kind of advantage. Just the idea of trying to get an advantage is the nature of samsara or suffering. It's the nature of it. Wanting things to be different than they are. The Buddha said this 2,500 years ago. What did he say? I don't know, I wasn't there. A bunch of people had ancient stone typewriters, wrote it all down. Just trying to see if you're listening or not. And we come up with it, one of the translations of it is, life is suffering. Four Noble Truths. Life is suffering. Ouch. I don't like this. This is not good. I'm going to go away. Anything from heart attacks to just basic psychological distress that is unnameable and unsearchable, and you can't find a source to that. Trying to find the source of something is very difficult. The Buddha solved that problem for us, in a sense, by saying, life is suffering. Why? Because we want things to be different than they are. Desire. Life is suffering because of desire, wanting something else. And what is it? The teachings in a proverbial nutshell? There isn't anything else. If you think there's something else, you'll spin, you'll suffer, you'll chase your own tail, and you won't really know it. It'll look like a straight line to you, but to someone who is clear, to someone who understands the nature of the mind, the nature of reality, will see you spin, and will notice that you don't ask for help, and that they will also respect your spinning. They won't interfere with you. Someone who interferes with your spinning has their own confusion to deal with. Because people quite often want to solve your problem. Have you noticed that? People they see you having trouble and they want to give you advice. But you know what you should do? You should go here, go there, do this, take up this, study yoga, become gay. I'm gay. I wish you were gay. Not actually gay. But I tried it out to see what it was. I just didn't take somebody else's word for it. That doesn't mean you get to murder people, so you can see what it's like to be a murderer. There isn't anybody you haven't murdered. There isn't anybody that you haven't been their mother. There isn't anybody that hasn't been your mother, down through the centuries, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And I don't believe in past lives. I don't believe in anything. I actually do what I talk about. I don't believe. I don't disbelieve. I don't have a reference point. My reference point right now is you. You come in here expecting or looking for a Dharma talk. I want to tell you about it because I'm very, very motivated. It actually keeps my heart pumping to know that somebody wants to hear about this. If everybody leaves, I'll die soon. Not a threat. So, when it comes to investigating negativity, I would say trust yourself. Try out different things, different ways of looking at it. Maybe like in C.G. Jung, psychological types that he used. They're very, very interesting if you read about those. They're very, very interesting way of talking about feeling person, thinking person, intuitive types. And what is it? Myers-Briggs, I think, takes a lot of its meaning and a lot of its understanding from that, and probably from other sources. So there's lots of ways of categorizing, looking at the mind. There's the Enneagram, which maybe some of you looked into that. I had a little bit, just to see that it seems to work somewhat. I haven't made a life study of it. There's the astrology, which I have spent a lot of time studying. It's not a bad configuration, but it can't just be the stuff you read in the newspaper. You have to actually get your master's in it. If not your PhD, to really understand it. It's extremely complicated stuff. It's not just, well, how can the moon possibly affect how you... It doesn't affect it. Nothing affects anything else. The only time you can affect something else is if it's separate. If it's not separate, then it's more, from the point of view of relative truth, it's more like a dance, unless it's like warfare. Have you noticed? Lots of warfare going on. In your own head, when you walk out of this room, you're probably going to have some kind of conflict or warfare or difficulty happening, albeit maybe a low level where you can still smile and talk about the flowers in the garden, but below the surface there's a or maybe it doesn't make a sound. So investigations of negativity, have the negativity. Of course, what am I here to promote or talk about or say? I'm saying train your mind, strengthen the awareness. I'm not saying don't think. I'm not saying don't study tarot cards. You should study them. I have. Don't take anything for granted. Don't believe anything anybody says, in particular this guy. Don't believe anything I say. And also don't disbelieve anything I say. Why would you believe it? Why would you disbelieve it? When I say why, forget I said that. You don't need that kind of reference point. On the other hand, if you're sitting here and you're listening to these words that I'm saying, notice that you connect with some of them, even though you don't know exactly what it is, and others you don't connect with, even though you feel like you know what it is. Did you notice how I described that? I'm not going to repeat it. And what should you repeat? You should train your mind, repeat, come, find a wall. You don't have to be a Buddhist. I'm not trying to get rid of Buddhism. I like Buddhism. I'm a monk. You may have to do that, you may not, but I'm not here to convince you of anything. The only thing I'm encouraging you to do, because it is something I can say to you without interrupting your life flow or your particular karma, I can say, please, train your mind. Find a space in your busy life of chasing butterflies or whatever it is you do for a living, and sit down. Find a spot, sit down. Maybe sit in the same place every day. Maybe if you have a big family, you don't know, you don't particularly want to tell people that you're turning into a vegetable by sitting down looking at the wall, because a lot of people think that's what's happening when you meditate. Then go in the bathroom, use the bathroom, and then sit on the floor of the bathroom and look at the door. You don't have to tell anybody what you're doing, because you're not going to understand it. As soon as you say, I meditate, this is what they see. Their idea, their concept, their idea of what meditation is. And they have no clue. There's only one way you can know what meditation is, and that's to do a whole buttload of it. And even then, you'll have questions. So when negativity comes up, well, let's go back to the bathroom. We're not finished there yet. Okay, you're in the bathroom, you sit down, somebody comes to the door. Aren't you done yet? Yeah, it'll be about 10 more minutes. 10 more minutes? What are you doing in there? Using the bathroom. Which you are using, but you're not lying. In the bathroom. But you could do that. It's just an idea. I know people sometimes have so much difficulty finding time. I've done this, what I just talked about myself, a long time ago. But find a space to sit. Find a space to sit down, hold still. Use this mudra if this is helpful. I think it is, because it's not something you do casually. You don't actually cross your legs, sit down, and hold your back very straight casually. This is what you do. You do like this, like that. Hang out with your homies. Talk about stuff. I like this, I don't like that. What do you like? Not mocking anyone. Not trying to get on Saturday Night Live. Though I wouldn't turn down an invitation to go anywhere. So in the meditation, when the negativity arises, this is your opportunity. Rather than try to get rid of negativity, don't try to get rid of negativity. Waste of energy, waste of time. It's your life. You were born. It's like trying to get rid of your ears. I don't like my ears. I want rabbit ears. I'm being silly, but I'm just saying, isn't it funny how we look at ourselves and we, maybe I need bigger nostrils to be easier to breathe. We're always looking at ourselves and evaluating and judging and condemning and doing the same thing with others. You can't hardly help it. What do I say about that? Don't worry about it. Train your mind. Train your mind, because the negativity that is arising in the mind is part of your life. You don't want to, when I'm saying you don't, maybe you do, but if you're in this room, then you're probably ready to hear this, at least for the next 20 minutes, 15 minutes. There's not much more. But watching and seeing the negativity arise and doing nothing with it, don't believe it, don't disbelieve it, don't do anything with it. Just watch it as you do. Over time, it's called practice. It's an exercise. You're not going to find it out next week by meditating for 3 weeks straight or meditating for a whole year, 2 hours a day. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Probably not. I'm not going to condemn you or criticize you or speculate on the outcome of any kind of practice you might do, but probably not in that length of time. It's going to take a lot. I mean, you've been around lifetime after lifetime. You've spent lots of time just in this life just covering up stuff. Have you noticed anything? Something doesn't feel good or you don't like it, you cover it up. Don't think about it. Distract yourself. Go to a movie. Have a brewski. Have a doobie. There's other B's. I don't know what kind they are. There's a bunch of them I don't know about. I haven't been doing that for a while. But there's lots of ways of doing what? Getting away from what that is. And what I'm saying is, I'm not saying torture yourself, going to rub your nose in dog shit, but I'm saying just be present with your negativity. Please, please do that. It's difficult to do. I know it's hard to do. You sit there and you have really intense negative feelings or difficulty arise. We want so much to get rid of it or push it down or justify it or blame someone for it, passion, or destroy it, chop it up in pieces, aggression, or ignore it, distract ourselves, go away, go play pool. And nothing wrong with playing pool or having a drink or something. I'm not saying that. I'm saying when you start to use that to get away from your life, it just, if you think about it, if you reflect on it, if you contemplate it, you'll see this is not a particularly good thing to do. And probably lifetime after lifetime, you've been doing this same trek until you run into this old man. This is your opportunity, not because I'm so wonderful, it's because I'm nobody. I know you're nobody also. You need to realize it. If you realize you're nobody, you'll stop fighting with who you are, and you'll make friends with yourself. This is a beginning of compassion, is to love this person. And it's not a feeling about this person, feeling about something that's a low level of puppy love. It's actually not objecting to your emotions, positive, negative, neutral. Stop separating everything. How many times do I have to say that? That's what my mother used to say to me when I would do. How many times do I have to tell you? And I wanted to say, I didn't dare because I get hit. I wanted to say 50. I didn't do that. I knew there would be something coming through the air that I wouldn't be able to get out of the way of. So, different time, the 1940s. So I would say go ahead and use, there's all, I wrote down several, because I wanted to actually, I can't remember all this, but I read a list. Shikantaza, which is just sitting. Shine Shamatha, which is just holding still and just watching the breath come and go, an actual technique of following the breath. Vipassana, which is nothing at all. Vipassana feels like you're not getting anywhere. If you feel like you're getting somewhere, it's probably closer to shamatha or basic stabilization meditation. Not wrong. Maybe you have to do it, maybe you don't. I taught it. I was trained in that in 1978. I taught it to people, probably hundreds of people for years and years. I no longer teach that as a primary practice. The primary practice I teach is just open, just a formless meditation of just this. Just watch what arises and what comes and goes. And then if you personally need to do some kind of stabilization practice, then find something that's moving, which is your breath, and follow it. And if you need to follow it for a year, only you're going to know. The meditation teacher, he or she, may guess at it, but they probably aren't going to know for sure. I wait to see what someone brings to me. If I have a close student who talks in a certain way about what's happening, I may, tell them to even count their breaths, 1 to 10 for, 15 or 20 cycles. So, astrology, enneagrams, tarot, I Ching, psychological like C.G. Jung, tantric practices, visualization, study the Dharma, concepts with others, sit down with others like we do here every day, just about every day, I think. Sit down, take out a traditional teaching that supports the teaching of the Buddha out of the 3rd, 4th, 5th century or later, 13th century teachings of Dogen. We sit down together and we talk about those incredible teachings that are translated out of other languages. They aren't even given in English. That also works with the mind to help the conceptual thinking mind that's always judging, evaluating, condemning, accepting, rejecting. It brings that same it doesn't get rid of it. It brings that same process into thinking about the nature of the Dharma the way it is described in concepts. The Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the 12 links on the chain of existence. It goes on and on and on. There's all kinds of structures. Probably don't need very many, but it might be good to go in and do that a little bit and notice that other people understand. Notice that you can actually see other people's confusion, but you can't quite see your own. You can see the way, even someone who doesn't meditate can see the way people are confused. Not funny. And the other thing is don't teach. Don't teach anybody anything. Especially don't give advice unless you know you really have permission and the person is turning to you, looking at you, and asking you. And then be very, very tentative about telling them anything. Because your confusion, uninspected, is going to get mixed with your advice. Because you're not really seeing them. You're seeing your projection of them. Argue with me. If you can. You're seeing your idea of them. If you don't see your idea of them, then you see yourself. It's called not to. Nothing is separate from anything else, anywhere. But it's a realization that you have to do it. You have to realize it. You have to see it yourself so there's no doubt. If you have doubts, keep sitting. And when I say don't teach unless you have to, which is what I'm saying now, you'll know it. I didn't start doing what I'm doing now until just a few years ago. I spent about 30 years just sitting down and practicing and talking to people, studying with people together. I didn't present myself as a teacher at all. I still don't, really. Well, maybe a little bit. The other thing that I'm not mentioning here that I want to say something about is deep consciousness work. Deep consciousness gets a bad rap because people are talking about spirits and about possession by evil beings in the various spirit realms and so on, ghosts and so on. And I would say don't look away from that. And also don't necessarily grasp onto any aspect of it. We all know people, or perhaps you do, we certainly do here, because that's something we've looked into. We don't take that for granted. We take a look at it and say, does this work? If someone is having headaches, they don't know where they come from, and they meditate and they don't, and the doctors don't know, and all you can do is take acetaminophen, but you have migraines or something. There might be something going on with that psychology that could be addressed or looked at or even relieved through going into what is commonly called past lives. Don't believe it, don't disbelieve it. But something's going on before you got here. You aren't the big deal that happened, that finally you came here and there wasn't anything that went before. There's no past and future from that point of view. I'm happy to entertain questions around that topic. I'm just saying that don't shut down on anything. Don't shut down on Jesus Christ if that starts to show up for you. Don't shut down on anything. But what you could open up to is your own mind, the way your mind works. How are you going to do that? How are you going to get to know yourself really, really deeply? I can't do it for you. No one can. Your mother can't do it. Your brother can't do it. Your closest friend is probably your biggest enemy when it comes to deep consciousness work or meditation practice, because they're still working with opinions. And opinions are based on what? Do I dare say that Sanskrit word? No, I'm not going to say it. Let's call it baloney. That'll work. Have you noticed anytime you talk to anybody about anything, they have ideas and opinions about everything that is based on things they haven't looked at. The reason I'm able to sit up here and do this, I just spent pushing 50 years, 45 years, looking at my own mind and talking to people about what's happening with their mind. So I have a lot of time. I didn't go into a college and get a sheet of paper that says I know things. I don't have anything. I have no credentials in that regard at all. What is my credential? I don't have one. Buddhism is a raft. Like you get on the raft of the teachings and you go out and it takes you to, you actually transcend this world. And when you transcend this world, the raft vanishes. Everything vanishes. No reference point at all. You don't need a reference point if you're operating out of clarity, as Dogen said in the 13th century. Our lineage, a Japanese monk who started out this particular lineage of Soto Zen. Those who are confused about the nature of realization or clarity or sanity, those who are confused about what actual sanity actually is. are called sentient beings or homies. And those who are clear, completely clear about the nature of confusion or insanity or delusion, those who are clear about what that is, are Buddhas. And that's available to you. You can actually do that. You can actually realize what the Buddha realized 2,500 years ago without even being a Buddhist. It just helps to be a Buddhist, to study, kind of glue yourself to the teachings so you can, because it takes a lot of work, because you've just spent 583 lifetimes avoiding this. Of course, you probably have spent a few lifetimes getting in contact with this, or your karma would not bring you into this room, because you get here because of cause and effect. If you have questions, we have 5 minutes. Yes.
Question from Tayo up in Traverse City, Michigan.
Yes.
He asks, how can I thoroughly investigate negativity when negativity is an appropriation for an occurrence in my sense field?
Shut up. Give me a better question than that, Tayo. I don't want to hear that. Give me a better question. He knows what I'm talking about. I don't know. How can you do that? Appropriation. So, of course, he's correct in what he's saying. He's a smart fellow, extremely. Not a compliment, by the way. So he's going into that kind of structure around that and talks about something being an appropriation. The thing that he does there, he doesn't understand what he just said, because if he understood what he just said, he wouldn't have a question. If you have a further question, Tayo.
Not yet, but Sandra does.
Now, Sandra, I'm worried about that question.
He's from New York. He
Yes.
asks, what is there to investigate?
Investigate anything that arises until you understand. And when you understand, the investigation will basically come to a halt. It's not that you won't look into something or look into that, but it won't be operating out of hope and fear. It won't be operating out of loss or being incomplete or not being fulfilled. You'll be completely delighted to be wherever you're at. And it's not a state of mind. It is mind. It is. The sky doesn't care if there are clouds or not. But if you're attached to differentiation, if you're attached to desire to be rid of, it's the differentiation and desire that causes us to go out here and then go back into this and go and get kind of dizzy. Samsara goes round and around. So I would say to Sandra is just investigate. We have to do so much of it. This is I don't like to say this, but you're probably not going to be able to do this in a 3 or 4 years of meditating every day. It's going to take more than that. It's going to take a lot of intense meditation to turn this apple cart around, or see the very nature of the apple cart. You still have apple carts, or is that from the 1600s? And there isn't, I'm saying this to be helpful to you, not to be get into some kind of magical thinking, but there isn't any place you haven't lived. There isn't anyone you haven't been. And here you are, this person with this kind of issue. When the suffering comes up and the difficulty comes up, I'm not saying invite it or be delighted or be masochistic about it. I'm saying work with it. Look at it as an opportunity to see the nature of your mind, that you are not a solid being. What do I mean by that? I'm saying if you try to get rid of the suffering, then what tugs on it is the unreality, because the suffering has its reality, but the unreality is that there is no one suffering. So we tend to confuse that, and the next thing we know, we're back into duality, pushing and pulling, pushing and pulling. So your opportunity to see no self is in the suffering. And how is it in there? There's no one suffering. It's an astonishing discovery. And you can't take it to the bank. It won't spend. It is not a relative truth. It is absolute. And when I say absolute, of course I'm lying. Because you can't make a statement about the nature of reality without lying. Because reality is not relative.
Follow-up question from Sandra.
Yes.
Is the arising mind with a capital M and not so much the content? Or yes and both?
Oh, multiple choice. Sandru. Sword fight. I understand what you're asking, and I would say, yeah, it's both. But what happens when the opening happens, all of the separations tend to just fall apart without going anywhere. So the expectation is if that you're going to change, you're going to be someone else. It's very compelling and magnetizing to feel like if you were to attain enlightenment or realize who you are, that you would be a different person. Sandra? No. You?
Tayo.
Oh, Tayo, he's back. He had to go load his guns. He's coming back. Uh-oh.
Yes. Investigating negativity starts from a fundamental assumption that an experience is negative. How can I start from square one?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's pretty good insight. And I would say the way you start from square one is to go to your senses. Sense of touch. There's just a whole complete world in the sense of touch. This incredibly large sense organ called our physical body is feeling. Everything is. There's all these little nuances. We have so many nerve endings. The example I'm always using, just that sense alone, but it applies to all the other ones in different ways if you reflect on it. It's the same nerve ending that if you take a feather and go across your arm with a feather, it's pleasant, or even tickles a little bit. But if you go across your arm with a nail or a knife or something sharp or rugged, it will hurt. But it's the same nerve endings. So pain and pleasure are not that different from each other. It's just overdone. And when you have negative emotions come up in the mind, which is another nerve ending, not that the mind isn't some kind of superior sense consciousness. It isn't any more superior to seeing, smelling, tasting, touching. Mind is just receiving. And so when you have negativity in that area, do nothing with it other than just register it. Don't push on it. I'm not saying if somebody's scratching your arm with something, you shouldn't get away from it. Of course. But that's in a different kind of structure. Just like if something smells bad, you should leave the room. Well, it's pretty hard you notice how with that kind of sense, it's harder to get away from it because it's more all-pervasive. It's much more intimate. Sense of smell. Sense of taste, spit it out. Wait a minute, there's an aftertaste there. One time I dreamt that a fly crawled in my mouth and I bit it, and it tasted terrible. It was just horrible taste. It was a dream taste. And when I woke up, it was completely gone. There was no aftertaste, there was nothing. It's just I only had it happen once, but it kind of helped me to see how very, very vivid that the sense consciousnesses operate with no object. This is happening in the mind all the time. It's called paranoia. You're worried about things that don't exist. You might want to worry about the things that do exist.
One more question.
Certainly, go ahead.
If anyone here has one. There's nothing here.
No questions? Okay, thank you. Cowboy. That's what's on the back of my list. This is how it looks upside down.
We'll stand and dedicate the merit that's in the back of your blue chant books. I'd also like to remind everybody that we do have donation boxes in the hallways, so we welcome your support. Also online, we accept payments online.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-ho san shi-hu, shi-son mu-sa, mo-ko-sa, the 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.